everyone. In this video, we're going to dive into win and loss interviews and how to use them to make every part of your business better, especially your customer experience. Every part of your client journey can be better if you start doing these interviews, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how I use them in my businesses, and we'll even show you the questions I ask, explain why I ask them, and what to do with the data afterwards. When I walk into a company I have personally invested in or am consulting for, typically in the role of CEO, the very first thing I focus on is the finances. The second thing I do is what we're going to talk about today, implementing a client feedback loop via win-loss interviews. In my personal opinion, secondary to understanding the business finances, understanding your clients is the most important thing you need to know. In order to understand where to focus, prioritize change, and improve processes or the client journey, you need to talk to your clients. So there are a few key points I would comment on before we jump into the interviews themselves. First and foremost, there's typically a lag between the start of the project and getting enough data that is usable, so you're going to want to start this early, today if you can. As mentioned earlier, in any company I am working with, I will start this immediately by finding somebody in the organization to be accountable for the program. Later in this video, I'll explain more about their responsibilities after we review the interview questions. Secondly, I strongly suggest the interviews be conversations. A lot of people opt to automate the process, and I find the answers are shorter and responses are much lower. The data is incredibly powerful and valuable, so I suggest assigning somebody to actually pick up the phone and call the customer to ask the questions. Next, this is a listening exercise. There should be no selling, no trying to save the client, no trying to correct the client or address any of their issues. Listening only. The questions are purposely open-ended, and I instruct who is ever making the calls to ask the question and then stop talking. Any direction the client wants to go is okay. Just record what they say. The only time we deviate from the questions is when we need to qualify an answer on what the client is trying to say to ensure we understand it correctly. Lastly, the numbers matter. Earlier, when I said there was a lag between starting the project and getting data that is useful, it's because any given single interview isn't exactly actionable. What we are after is the overall sentiment of our clients as a whole. We do not want to turn this into an exercise that is a firefight where we try and fix every issue mentioned. We want to focus on the biggest items that come up the most. For that to happen, I generally like to make sure that we have enough data before analyzing the results. This is generally taking or talking to between 1 to 10% of the clients, depending on the size of the organization. As an example, if your business has 200 clients, I would like to see 10% or 20 interviews for each the win and the loss. This will give you a good picture of what all your clients are thinking. All that said, let's get into the first interview, the win interview. This interview should be done as soon as you can, ideally after they have completed signing up, but before they get into using the product or service itself. It is really important the feedback is limited to their feelings on marketing, sales, and onboarding only. Also, for context, both the interviews we will be reviewing today are for a SaaS company based in the real estate space. It is a service-enabled tech play with a high-ticket item, so when we go through the questions, keep that in mind. You can change the questions to better suit your needs and better represent your company. I start off by generally having the person responsible for making the calls note the client's name and contact information. This gives us the ability to do a few things, like call them back if we need clarification on anything, or in the case of a really good interview, ask them for a testimonial or a referral in case they know anyone that could benefit from our services. Next, I will ask to note the products the client is using. It will be a theme as we go through both the win and the loss interviews, but I will explain it here. It is critical to look at the data from different angles, by product, by experience, etc. Later, when we analyze the results, we will compare the ratings given by each of the cohorts to the overall scores or ratings. By doing so, you may notice some big swings in the ratings that will draw your attention to a single product or a single cohort of customers. It will be important to isolate those so we can dig in and find out why. In the case of this particular company, we are a tech play that some might consider complicated. so we are very interested in how technical the client is. It will help us better understand if we need to improve our training, come up with better tutorials or walkthroughs, or just plain simplify the product. It can also help us narrow down the ideal client profile if we better understand how this contributes to churn in the loss interview. Similarly, we like to know how long they've been active in their space, as our product may be better suited to more experienced users. In addition to time, we also ask how many transactions per year they average. Again, we're looking for a correlation to positive ratings and their experience. We will always ask the questions, how did they hear about us? This is more for our marketing department and ensuring that we understand how our marketing spend is affecting new to file clients. We will simply help marketing understand where to spend more of their time and effort and validate what is working and what may be less effective. Another important question to ask is, why did they sign up? More specifically, what was the single biggest selling point? The answer to this question generally surprises most companies, but is critical to help shaping not only the messaging from our marketing and sales teams, but shaping the product itself by focusing on more of what the client wants and less on what they don't. Because this particular company is a tech company wrapped in a service offering, we like to ask, how do you feel we can help you the most? And it's broken down into one of two ways: reach a goal of X or solve my problem of Y. Again, not to oversimplify, but the answers to this simple question will help marketing copy be more effective, sales pitches be more effective, service teams be more focused on what the client actually wants, and shape the product offering itself. The last two questions are ratings with commas. How is your onboarding experience so far is the first. Nailing this part of the client journey is critical. Correcting all the feedback from clients that gave you low scores so future clients don't have the same issues will definitely affect your retention rate and help you continue to grow. The second is arguably the most important question on the interview and is a classic NPS survey question. How likely are you to refer us to a colleague? If you are not consistently getting 9s or 10s on this questions, you need to address the common feedback. In addition, for any of the customers that are giving you 9s or 10s, you should ask them for a referral or a testimonial for your marketing collateral or sales efforts. Again, this should not be done on this call, but should be a later initiative. Okay, moving on to the loss interview. The loss interview should be done immediately at cancellation. In fact, I would bake it into the offboarding process if you can, to ensure that it is done. The more time that passes between the cancellation and outreach for this call, the less likely it'll actually happen. The first questions are all similar to the win interview and is done intentionally. This is done intentionally so we can also divide the results into cohorts and compare the two cohorts to the data as a whole. We're looking for outliers here, and when digging in when we find them, to determine why the scores are better or worse. For the new questions on the loss interview, I like to also note contract value and their length of service in months. Again, I like to compare scores from different angles to see where we as a company need to focus. In this particular company, we learned any client that lasted 90 days typically lasted for years. So if we nailed down the first 90 days, it would have the biggest impact on our churn. So that's exactly what we did. The next two questions are critical, and it's important to ask them openly. In one sentence, where did we go wrong? And what could we have done to prevent you from leaving? It is important enough for me to say it again. Please remember that this is a listening exercise, and it is not our job at this time to try and save the client here. Just listen and record what they say. The data as a whole will help save all clients in the future, and it is more important that we get honest and an unfiltered answer from this client rather than stopping and trying to save them here. We also ask the clients to rate us on our support, our technology, and our education. We generally don't have to ask for comments because most will tell us right away why they gave us the score and what we could have done to make it a better score, and those are very important to note as well. Very important for helping determine the small changes that can be made to ensure all clients are happier in the future. Lastly, probably the most important question on the loss interview, and with the preface that you're asking the question because you genuinely care about your customers and their experience, ask if they have any advice to us to prevent this from happening to another client. Clients will give you amazing ideas and advice here. Note everything and organize it, as it will be gold for your company and its improvement. Now that you've done all the interviews, both the win and the loss, and we have enough interviews to be considered representative of the whole, and if you've forgotten, that is anywhere between 1 and 10% of your client portfolio, depending on the size of the company, it's now time to organize and present the data to your leadership team. For data organization, I generally like to present the data as a whole with ratings for each question. In addition, I like to highlight the top 3 comments for each question. As a reminder, this isn't a firefight where we're trying to solve everything, but instead looking for the largest bucket of concerns and insights on what the clients love. The overall goal is to move the company more towards the things that the clients like and farther away from the things that they don't. Also, don't forget to compare cohorts. If anything is far off the average as a whole, you need to go down that rabbit hole and find out why. With the data being organized, you will quickly see certain themes, both positive and negative, bubbling to the top. Take the data and present to your leadership team, outlining the results and highlighting the areas that the team need to focus on. I suggest this is done quarterly to both chart progress on scores and keep the team updated on how your clients are thinking. Also share the top comments that came up the most. Marketing can use to focus on messaging, sales can use to improve sales efforts, service can use to shape how you service the clients in your product, and be examined to beef up areas that the clients rave about and sunset areas that they don't care about. Do all these things and your company will continually improve, resulting in happier clients and ultimately growth. I hope this video gave you something to think about, and if you found it insightful, you should check out my ebook. I put the link in the description below. It covers the first 10 things I would address when helping an organization guide through or plan for a growth phase in their startup. Lastly, if you like content like this, please subscribe so you don't miss any videos in the future. Thanks again for watching.